High Score Challenge
with Nick Marotta.
Alright, and welcome to another week of results. This week we played Donkey Kong with 23 scores submitted. Digital Bytes, 3,900. Mark B, 4,400. C. Duras, 5,100. CoCo Discord user, 13,400. Joshua Craker, 13,500. Catlord, 14,000. BoatofCar, 14,500. 8-Bits in the Basement, 15,300. Rob Inman, 16,500. Just Mike, 16,900. Buck Owen, 17,200. Canadian Retro Thing, 17,500. Mr. Dave, 20,900. Sloopy Malibu, 22,100. Paul Shoemaker, 29,200. L. Curtis Boyle, 30,700. David Craker, 33,300. Louis, 41,700. Me, 43,000 even. Tom C, 51,500. Tasman, 59,400. Jim Rye, 67,400. And the number one score this week belongs to the Devil Bunny, Aaron, Amigos Retro Gaming, 77,800. Great score. Thank you to all this week's participants and another great week of gaming.
Something else you use?
Well, we only use Zoom and OBS when I'm doing something with a big gang. We only use Zoom and
OBS. Now I'm hearing audio on the YouTube feed.
Yeah, I just had to restart the OBS for some reason. It has difficulty with the default device on Windows.
Woo. Yay!
All right.
So
we're back.
Yeah, should we do the high score challenge over again?
Might as well.
Guys...
Yeah.
Sure.
Work it out.
High Score Challenge
with Nick Marotta.
Alright,
On
and
the
welcome
stream.
to another week of results. This week we played Donkey Kong with
Okay, here we go.
23
Game on
scores
results is
submitted. Digital Bytes, 3,900. Mark B, 4,400. C. Duras, 5,100. CoCo Discord user, 13,400. Joshua Craker, 13,500. Catlord, 14,000. BoatofCar, 14,500. 8-Bits in the Basement, 15,300. Rob Inman, 16,500. Just Mike, 16,900. Buck Owen, 17,200. Canadian Retro Thing, 17,500. Mr. Dave, 20,900. Sloopy Malibu, 22,100. Paul Shoemaker, 29,200. L. Curtis Boyle, 30,700. David Craker, 33,300. Louis, 41,700. Me, 43,000 even. Tom C, 51,500. Tasman, 59,400. Jim Rye, 67,400. And the number one score this week belongs to the Devil Bunny, Aaron, Amigos Retro Gaming, 77,800. Great score. Thank you to all this week's participants. Another great week of gaming.
Okay.
All right. So again, congratulations to Aaron. We'll talk to you in a minute about your playing. In the meantime, I'm going to start the video. I think. Yes. This is a video sent to us. This is my turn for problems. This video again was sent to us by Canadian Retro Things. So thank you very much, CRT Ken, for sending this. And so we have Aaron from Amigos Retro Gaming, who is the number one player this week. Welcome, Aaron.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, I understand you posted in Discord that this is your game. So why don't you go ahead and talk to us about your history with Donkey Kong and why it's your game.
Sure, man. So, when this game came out in the arcade, because I'm this old, I was around and I was like, holy crap, look at this looks awesome. It was different than I've ever seen. And so I really got into it. And I played the whole run of the Donkey Kongs. And when I got older and I cobbled together enough cash, I went out and bought myself an arcade cabinet for Donkey Kong.
Oh, wow.
And then I lost all that cash and I had to sell the cabinet. But I cobbled together more cash and bought another one. So I own one. I've got it out in my arcade. And so I played a lot of Donkey Kong. And I remember it's before I got back into the CoCo where I saw a report come up and they were talking about the CoCo getting amazingly getting this on it. I couldn't believe it. At the time, I didn't have a CoCo to even try it on. But man, this is one of the first games I loaded up when I finally got my CoCo and added all the extra stuff to it. And it's a monument to the genius of the fella that put this together.
I just want to make sure people are aware. For those of you who aren't aware, this game is actually running the arcade ROM. So this is the arcade version of Donkey Kong. So when Aaron talks about having the arcade version, this is a transcode. They basically took the code and made it so that it would run on a 6809. So continue on, Aaron.
Well, I'll just throw in one other little bit of trivia here. The author is actually John Kowalski, the sock master. He's done a ton of incredible CoCo 3 demos and other things too. And he's the one who did the first successful transcode of an arcade game to the CoCo. Now we've got several out there, including Pac-Man and Space Invaders and a few others. Anyway, go ahead, Aaron.
I don't know how many others. I mean, listen, I don't know if this transcoding gimmick is something you see on a bunch of other machines. It's not it's not something I've seen a lot of. But for the CoCo to run this, I couldn't believe it. So, like I said, I own Donkey Kong. I'm pretty familiar with it, having played it over the years. And the CoCo transcode of it it's dead on, man. It plays just like if I walked out to my machine. And so at that point you get, which is great. I don't have an RGB monitor, so I just flip the colors over and play it. It still looks good. And so at that point you get to the area that the weak spot of this is, which is what your controller is. The Black Beauties aren't what I would call, they aren't conducive to getting a high score on this one. I went a couple rounds trying to play this with those, and it didn't have very good luck. And it's basically because the climbing the ladders, you have to be very quick, and the Black Beauty's not self-centering. It make it difficult. It's a lot easier with an Atari stick or the Deluxe. So I recommend that. That will improve your games right out of the gate if you've got access to one of those. And then in terms of getting better at this game, listen, a lot of people point press. Donkey Kong is notorious for being a game you can point press in. All the great players that play for points do it, where there are tricks you could do to just score a lot of extra points in this. I never do that. I never have, because that's not the way I grew up playing it. I just play and just try to get as far as I can without dying. I mean, that's everyone that knows me. That's the way I always play. I mean, I can point press, but it's not fun. I just want to see how far I can get. So that's sort of my philosophy on this game. This is a game you just have to practice. A lot of people think it's super hard. And I mean, I guess it's pretty hard, I guess, if you're not used to it. But if you've played it enough times, just like playing, like I was watching Frodo play Manic Miner earlier on his stream. It's very similar. You just learn the timings and learn what to do and what not to do. But when it comes to the various levels, I mean, I don't use any patterns. So I'm probably not the best person to give a talk on how to get better at this. Now that I think about it, it's just a matter of timing things and watch things, and a little bit of luck doesn't hurt. Really, the biggest timing issues you're going to have in this are on the level we're looking at now, the elevators, because of that the jackhammer thing that pops down. On the first couple levels, it's not that difficult, but as you go up, it becomes a real. I mean, all the pros, that's the thing that really gives them trouble, because it's not a set pattern, and you have to see how it's coming out to see where you're going to stand. Then you sort of have to run past the ladder that you're going to go up to get up to the girl, because otherwise it'll hit you, and you have to sort of run with it. It's a real strange maneuver in gaming, but that's something you have to memorize. If you've ever seen King of Kongs, the great docudrama, or whatever you want to call it, Steve Wiebe actually had a magic marker. He would draw the patterns of the jackhammer on his screen. I remember seeing that, and I thought to myself, that'd be a good idea if I, was okay with drawing on an arcade machine. That he had actually physically drawn the patterns on his, so you could tell the pros they put a lot of time in that. The rest of the levels, there are ways to manipulate which ladders and the directions that the barrels go in. I really that's something else I just don't do. But if you know how to do it, you can sort of manipulate which way they're going, and that helps a lot. I just do it all on instinct and timing. I mean, for the most part, there are do's and don't do's, and you've got to know how many barrels you can jump over and how many you can't, and the positions of them. Really, on this level, the difficulty comes for me is when Donkey Kong just randomly throws crap straight down or off to the side. That can be a real problem. Yeah, and he'll just occasionally just wind one up and toss it. But for the most part, the rest of it, if you can get up to the top level right there, then you're pretty much golden. You could go and stand under the lip there and just keep jumping until there's an opening and go. But it's all about timing. Most of the times I get killed on this, it's just because I screw up. I screwed up the timing. It's not like this game throws a lot of curveballs at you. The second level where you're going over the little stoppers that open up the girders. I don't have a pattern on that either. I just basically go around. I usually try to get the lower ones first. Most people go after the lower ones and then try to get the last, say, 4 at this, towards the end. I do that when I can, but sometimes if the fireballs won't let me get up there, I just basically make it up. I don't normally use the hammers on any level, but the second level, the hammer that's in the middle on the second level, the level below Donkey Kong, I use those to clear it out a little bit to make it easier to go up and take out those top rivets. The cement factory, the pie factory level, it's not super tough if you get a good jump on it, and you just have to watch where the fireballs come out of the barrel and go the other way. That's pretty much my philosophy on that one. The Japanese version of this game, you have to get all the way to the top to rescue the girl on that level. But in the American version, all you have to do is just get to the same level Donkey Kong's on. So it's a little bit easier in the American version of it.
I didn't realize that was the difference between the two versions.
Yeah. There's in fact, the levels are laid out totally different in Japan. In Japan, this level is the last level. So you'll come to this one last, which makes sense because this is where you kill Donkey Kong. It's one thing I couldn't figure out in the arcade. It's like, why'd they put this second? But they did. I don't know why they changed it like that. But
well, it was a real thrill to get to the cement level then on that one, because it took a lot to get there.
Yeah,
you had to go through 3 levels of barrels and rivets and 2 elevators. How far? Do you remember how far you got when you got your score?
I think I got I was on I want to say the 4th. I got killed on the elevator screen by a jackhammer, and I want to say it was my 4th go around on that. but I may be off by one. It may have been my fifth. I can't
So
remember.
you went through the cement. You went through the pie level.
Oh yeah.
It's funny.
Yeah,
People either
several
call it
times.
coconut cream pies or cement.
Yeah. Well, Nintendo released a Game and Watch game. I think it was called Mario's Cement Factory. Something sort of similar to that. And so I've always called it the Cement Factory. I've heard Pie Factory. I've heard both ways. I wanted to give before I shut up, I want to give a shout out to there's a someone went out. I don't know if it's the same guy that made like this for the CoCo with a bunch of crazy other levels on it. I don't know what that's even called.
The
But
spooky remix and stuff.
I don't know. What's the one on the CoCo?
There's 3 or 4 of them. He's got a Christmas themed
remix.
one. He's got a Halloween themed one. He's got Donkey Kong remix.
Yeah,
And these are
remix.
arcade ports,
yeah.
and the CoCo has a Donkey Kong remix
Yeah,
as well.
the remix is great. Those are great. I've got a Boredom arcade machine. It's a special board. You take and plug it into your Donkey Kong board, and it gives you Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong 2, which was an unreleased, like fan made Donkey Kong. It's like double hard. And remix reminds me a lot of that. It's just super duper tough and fun and different. And so I recommend that one as well. If you played this back in the day,
Look at the flames.
Yeah, a lot of the CoCo a lot of the versions just didn't have all the boards, and that's one of the reasons that the CoCo version of the King was so awesome, because it had, you got all those extra boards. I know Boat hates it, but I love that game. It's a lot slower than this one, but it's super fun. But having this and there, it's like the CoCo has the monopoly on the Donkey Kong ports. So good for it. But yeah, I had a lot of fun playing this, and I'll play it and just get better and practice, and you'll do fine. That's my advice to anybody.
I want to ask Canadian Retro Things if he's still in the chat. Did you know that you could trap the fireballs over like that? Because I've never seen that before. That's really cool. So if you're in chat, please let me know if you knew about that and were being a really elite player. But
a lot of people will trap those fireballs on one side of the grid there on that level, and then
that's what I do.
They go up and point press for the rest of until the time runs out. That's the level you can really score a lot of points on.
Because the fireballs will always appear on the side facing Pauline's back. So yeah, if you get those 4 and then get the hammer and smash them and make sure Pauline's facing to the right, the fireballs will appear on the other side of the holes. So yeah. So one thing I did notice, and I don't know if I thought it was a very difference between the American and Japanese versions, but I'm not sure now. But on this version, you could climb the ladder and the barrels would not roll down on you. So you could wait for the barrels. You could wait on the ladders, and the barrels would just roll over you. But I know some versions of Donkey Kong you can't do that. If you go on the ladder, the barrels will always roll down on you. So the version of the ROM that this used, you could actually hide on the ladder.
That might be the easy setting too. I'm not sure.
I don't know. I thought it was a difference between American and Japanese, but like Aaron said, I do know the Japanese version.
They'll roll down on you in the American version.
When barrels, pies, elevator, rivets. So I'm not sure what the difference where the difference between the ROMs was. But if you look on the disk image of Donkey Kong Remix, you'll see it has the Donkey Kong ROM file. So I don't know what version it includes. So I don't know if you could swap that out. I wonder. Anyway,
I think on the remix version you can actually choose whether you want the US or the Japanese order level also.
Yes, and also Remix A or Remix B. I thought about doing the remix, but I thought we would do the normal version for this go round anyway. So yeah, I don't see an answer from Canadian Retro Things. So
Canadian Retro
pure
Things.
chance. It was pure. Sorry, Jason. Yeah, it was pure chance.
Okay, you found it. Good.
Sorry about that, Jason. I didn't mean to.
No worries.
Yeah. Welcome to Donkey Kong Talk.
Donkey
King
Kong
rocks.
Talk.
And yes, Donkey Kong Remix was also Sockmaster. That
was Sockmaster.
Donkey.
How
He's done
dare
some
we
custom
talk about the
arcade
game of the
boards.
week on the Game On segment, really?
Someone calls it the custard pie level. So there we go. I guess maybe it's a regional thing.
Yeah,
So
no,
it's-
Sock actually sells those upgrade boards for the Spooky Remix, the Christmas Remix, etc. to arcade cabinet owners. So you can actually purchase those from him.
Did he make
believe-
those?
Yes.
Those
believe he-
I do love those. They're really good.
Yeah,
I believe he did a Donkey Kong Jr. remix as well.
Yeah, he did.
But that one is
Not
not,
on the
available
CoCo,
for the CoCo. No,
That-
I'd
can
love
you-
for that to be available on the CoCo.
Has anyone tried swapping out the? I mean, can you play the Donkey Kong Junior ROMs on this thing? Has anybody ever done that or attempted it? I mean, is it because they're pretty similar. That's why the boards are very similar. I think it's like might even be a chip swap.
I wondered. I know the file names would be different, so I wonder if you changed the file names or whatever. But I don't know.
I can't remember if John ever mentioned, because people had asked him about doing Donkey Kong Jr. and I think he said he wasn't going to do it. And I can't remember the reasoning was he just didn't feel like, having the time to do it, or if there was some technical issue.
I could have sworn there was a Donkey Kong Jr. remix for the arcade anyway, but I don't know who did it then. If it wasn't Sockmaster.
No, he did one. He did one for the arcade, but on the CoCo, people had asked him why don't you do a Donkey Kong Jr. for the CoCo port?
Oh, that'd be great. I wish you would.
But he said there is some reason, and I can't remember what it was.
Huh. So yeah, this is definitely one of the top arcade games from back in the day. The short list of great games is Pac-Man, Donkey Kong. So
Sockmaster was working on a CoCo 1 and 2 version of this too.
Yeah, a much
really?
closer arcade port than even Donkey King is.
Yeah, and it would use the artifact colors, which suit this game because it's got the red and blues.
yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Yeah. Too bad Boat's not here to talk about his hatred of Donkey King, but that's another story. One day I'll forgive him for that, but the day has not arrived yet. It's pretty close though.
Yeah, give him a few more years to get over it, right?
Maybe by episode 1,000, maybe
Yeah.
that'll be the gift. Okay, well, anybody else have anything you want to share about their Donkey Kong memories or playing this game this week? Or
I just remember the game being hard in the arcade. I liked the game. I did play it a fair bit, but it was just a quarter sucker for me. I never did very, very good. I could very rarely make the Pie Factory. I can make the elevators pretty well every time, but that was about the extent.
Yeah.
And when I played it this time around, it was the exact same experience.
does
I did
Donkey
the,
King have a kill screen? Or Donkey Kong have a kill screen? Yes, it does.
Yes.
Apparently.
Yeah.
If you look at if you watch the documentary, they'll be like, "We got a kill screen coming! We got a kill screen coming!" Everybody's all excited. I think it's the same reason as Pac-Man. It just get the level. It's an overflow.
Yeah, you
of
overflow counter.
the level. So
I do want to thank Aaron for taking up the challenge. I mean, we did trash talk him a little bit last week just to kind of spur him on, and it worked. He went in and kicked out.
You trash talked me,
Names.
Curtis? I can't believe it, man.
Yeah, you
Boat's
should
been a bad influence on you, man.
you should submit your score anyway. We don't. It's not about the score. It's about fun. But we did think it'd be fun to have you on today to talk about. You dominated this week. So
Thank
I
you
will
very much.
I will give a shout out. This was a perfect game for Neil Blanchard's Gamester joystick. I felt like I was back in the arcade. The only thing was missing was I almost burned a cigarette hole in the cabinet, the case, to mimic about what it was like back in the 80s. But I decided not to. But no, the Gamester joystick was great with this game. And then I also played with a gamepad, which was also good. I didn't even try the Black Beauty because, like Aaron said, it would not.
Yeah,
be
you need self-centering. A quick question for Nick and Aaron both here. Is this the first game out of all the challenges that had the first year of challenges that we've had that Aaron's actually got first place?
I think you were. Was it? I couldn't remember
No.
if you did one more.
No. I haven't had much luck with some of the games that we played, but this was sort of in my wheelhouse. I thought I'd do better at Demon Attack last week, but man, I got to give other people credit. That game's really tough, and I just couldn't get it done.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. It was a really good score. We had a lot of good scores. I thought, we had a lot of in the 30s, 40s, 50,000s, and then Aaron was the 70,000, was it? I think it was.
It's like 77, I think.
Yeah. But who's counting, right?
Unless it's your
Yeah.
score, then it counts.
That's right. All right. So are we ready to move on to talk about next week's game then?
Yes.
All right. So next week's game is a request, and it is a very, very obscure game. It's one I never heard of. So I don't know. It's one that's not even on your page, Curtis.
Well, that's
So-
just because I'm so far behind. There's about 600 in the queue on my page.
So Mr.
Not
Smarty
all.
Pants Curtis, do you know what this game is?
No, I don't.
So this request came to us from Sloopy Malibu, and the game is called Turtle Attack.
Oh, I have. Okay, sorry, I lied. I have heard of this one.
So
I've
basically,
not played it in years though.
It's a simple premise. You control this tank, and you need to shoot the turtles. You can't run into them. And turtles lay eggs, which you can and should run over, because if you don't, they will hatch and spawn another turtle. And so basically, the object of the game is to shoot all the turtles and advance.
If I remember correctly, this was one of those tape magazine like Chromaset or T&D software that published this one, right?
I'm not sure.
I think I've done some research on this one. I just didn't have enough to put up a web page entry for it yet.
So when you start this, you can move the slider from easy to hard. So we're going to play on easy, because even easy I found was pretty challenging. So that's our game of the week.
Are you sure we can play this? Isn't turtles protected species?
It's okay because these are digital turtles, so it's pretend.
There we go. So that's our game of the week. And thank you, Stevie and Mark. And thank you guys for taking part and for giving us another great week of gameplay. And we'll see you next week.
Cool. And congratulations on your first year complete of Game On.
Oh, thank you very much. And again, thank you to everybody who's taken part and made it a success. It's been fantastic.
I just need to learn to play games better.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, when you have 5 spare minutes to kill and get 100,000 points.
Oh, Donkey Kong, I spent about 2 hours trying to get a good score in that, and I could barely muster 30,000. So,
well, 30,000 is still good.
My hat's off to Aaron on that one.
So he had like 5 minutes when he was making a hot pocket, so he decided to go ahead and play. You know.
Yeah, well, I was coding with my left hand. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, do we want to run commercial and then get into Game On news?
Yeah.
Sure.
I think so.
Hi, this is Eddie Zerbinski from beautiful Quebec City. Vous écoutez CoCoTALK.
As you're enjoying CoCoTALK, we also want to remind you about the CoCo Discord server. This is a place where people come to connect, to ask questions, to provide answers, to share information, and to socialize. So when you're done, why don't you head on over to the CoCo Discord server and we'll continue the conversation there. The easy to remember link is discord.cocotalk.live. See you on Discord. CoCo123 is the Glenside Color Computer Club community newsletter that's been in publication since 1985. While the Rainbow magazine may be gone, it doesn't mean you still can't have a cool CoCo periodical. Head on over to the Glenside Color Computer website at glensideccc.com and then click on the Documents link to view all the past issues of the CoCo123 newsletter. Not only can you read all of the past and present issues, we'd also love to hear some submissions from you. So if you'd like to send an article, a column, something to talk about, maybe even a program listing, send an email to glensideccc@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. The CoCo World Map is a cool community resource where you can view coconuts from around the world. Head on over to map.cocotalk.live and see where your fellow coconutians happen to be living on the planet Earth. If you would like to submit yourself to be on the CoCo map, send an email to cocotalk@cocotalk.live, and we look forward to seeing you on the CoCo map. Hey guys, it's Stevie Strode. If you've been watching CoCoTALK for a while, hopefully you understand that everyone is welcome to join this show. You don't need an impressive resume to get on. You just need to enjoy the CoCo and be willing to talk about it. There is no wrong way to CoCo. There is no wrong way to be a fan of the CoCo. There's no wrong way to be on CoCoTALK. You just have to want to talk CoCo. So if you would like to join us, then reach out to us on our Discord server, which is discord.cocotalk.live, or send an email to cocotalk@cocotalk.live, and let's get you on the show and let's talk about the CoCo.
Hi, I'm Tim, and you're watching CoCoTALK Live. And I'm playing Daggereth online like that idiot from the book.
Can you dial back on the condescension there as you respond there?
You are watching CoCoTALK, the world's leading weekly video podcast, featuring a candy-colored computer. We spread the love to the past, present, and future for all models, including the original color computer, the CoCo 3, and the world-renowned exclusive French-Canadian CoCo 2, the Radio Shack.
Okay, take it away, Curtis.
Okay. Actually, just before I get started on that, I think BoatofCar Schaller just joined us as well.
Hey guys.
So we're having full Amigos representation today.
How's it going?
And actually, one of the news items, actually, I'll let you do it first because actually you guys are going to be doing a pre-record right after CoCoTALK's over. So you want to kind of explain both shows that
we normally record our shows, aside from Amigos, which we do every week, our other shows about a month ahead of time. So if you're looking to get a sneak preview of the next edition of the CoCo Show podcast, we're going to be recording it immediately following CoCoTALK on our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Amigos Retro Gaming. So this month's CoCo Show, which is really going to be next month's CoCo Show, is Demon Attack, a game familiar to a lot of you guys because it was just featured on the Game On Challenge a couple weeks ago. So we're really excited to dive deep. We're going to be talking about the history of the game, going into a lot of comparisons with the various ports and things like that. So if you're into it, join us right after CoCoTALK.
And you might as well plug the other show you're recording at the same time here, just in case there's some cross-platform.
Absolutely. So, we also do a show about the Atari computer called 1200 XL, which is the much maligned edition of the Atari 8-bit that nobody remembers. It was canceled after only 1 year because it was vastly overpriced. But anyway, 1200 XL is all about Atari 8-bit games. And this month's episode, which again is really going to be next month's episode, is going to be Pole Position. So who doesn't love Pole Position, right?
Oh, good game.
Yeah, so it's going to be a good time. If you've never listened to any of the Amigos podcasts before, you'll know that it's about 80% banter, 20% substance. So,
so your quota's still beating ours, though. So
but yeah, we love to have you guys hang out with us on Twitch. We always, interact with the chat before and after the show and stuff like that. So come on by, twitch.tv/Amigos Retro Gaming.
Hey, thanks.
Excellent.
And with that, I'll get back to the rest of the news. So let me share a screen here.
Time for news.
Game On news. It's actually a pretty short week this week. There's just a few. So go through these fairly quick. Okay, first off, we have Cuthbert Dragon. We've featured a lot of his videos before, and he's been doing, his redoing his page with the 2 games, 3-minute shots, with some exceptions. And this particular one, he actually played Shock Trooper right through and got through every screen, got every single shrinking spaceship thing, and actually won the game, basically, where you get a 10,000 point bonus, which I've never been able to do myself. Has anybody else in the panel been able to do that on Shock Trooper? So what I thought I would do here is I would play the last. Yeah, I'll play the last minute of the game so you guys can actually see with the windscreen. I mean, it's not hugely impressive or anything, but just to see him get this far, that's what was news to me. So I'll just play this little 1-minute clip. I actually see the word exit, which I thought was rather strange. And there's some of those falling things from the ceiling, which I'd not seen, except I think last week when he did his first longer playthrough of it. But that turning invisible becomes absolutely necessary. You will not win the game if you don't use that feature, which, I mean, some people who just picked up the game back in the old days through the underground channels may not have known that was even an option. I'm not playing the sound too because he didn't actually play the game sound. He actually just played some musical track in the background. I don't want to get a ding for it. So
ding.
We probably already have been dung anyway.
She actually board the ship and fly up, which I thought was kind of cool. And then you get 10,000 bonus points. So that's a good way to jack up your score if you can do it. And then he had one other one, and this is different. This is the first non-game play video that he's done on his channel. And he's got issues 2 through 5 of the Cuthbert Chronicle, which is the gaming magazine for the Dragon, which actually features a lot of CoCo stuff too. So if you guys want, it's just a 2-minute, 20-second video. I could play the whole thing because he actually kind of like goes through some of the pages. He shows some of the ads, some of the game reviews. This ad here was for the 69 Color Show, which is for Dragon and Tandy users. Did you guys want to see the whole video or just a brief clip of it?
Yeah.
Hit it. Wake up.
Okay, well, if you guys want me to cut it short, just tell me, but I'll play it for now.
Is there any audio?
Is the sound?
No, he's just got music playing in the background, so it's not. But you recognize some of the CoCo games like Danger Ranger, Beam Rider, The King. Dungeon Raid was uniquely done for the Dragon. The special artwork here and a review of Time Bandit itself. And of course, their artwork was quite different than ours.
Were all the CoCo magazines, were any of them 100% full color, or were they always kind of a combination of black and white and color?
Pretty well a combination, I think, all of them. The most colorful one was probably Color Computer Magazine, which came out in 83 till 85, I think. And
Was
then
that
Hot
the
CoCo
official
and
Radio
Rainbow.
Shack production? Was that sponsored
Nope.
by?
No, that was TRS-80 Microcomputer News. It was the Radio Shack one.
Okay.
Tea Time, obviously, and Fierce Freddy. Those are uniquely Dragon titles there. Though they work on the CoCo once you could use the keys. I just find it kind of cool that Microdeal actually made these magazines in full color just for their gamers. And I don't think we really had an equivalent in North America. There was an Adventure Survivors newsletter thing for playing adventure games, but it wasn't the production value like this. It was just a Xerox newsletter. Now, Boat, since you do a lot more with the UK market and the European market with some of your shows and some of your fans and stuff, is this something that was common to the Spectrum and the BBC Micro and that kind of thing too? Do you know, or
you mean just having magazines, or
just devoted to the games of a particular?
Oh
platform?
yeah, I mean it was insurmountably bigger in the UK. The gaming magazines, I don't remember a lot of solely gaming magazines coming out for computers in the 80s. But in the UK, because the market was on average, 10 years younger, I'd say. The magazines devoted to the Spectrum were 100% games, or maybe 90% games, or maybe it was, I wouldn't say it was flip-flopped in the States, but it was definitely more rare to have a magazine solely devoted. Like, we didn't really have anything like Crash magazine for the Spectrum here in the States, I don't think, for the CoCo or for the Atari computers or anything like that.
Yeah, because we did have generalized gaming magazines like Electronic Games Monthly and stuff, but that covered every console.
That was everything, right.
But devoted to a single platform.
It is sort of weird that we didn't, because you'd think that there would have been a market there. That there were, I would say that from time immemorial, the majority of users, of computer users, there's always people that are just in it for the games. So you'd think that the market could have supported at least one, but we really didn't have any.
Yeah, I remember before the big video game crash in '84, there was like Video Game Monthly, Electronic Games, and something else. I can't remember what the official title was, but they didn't.
Of course, Atari Age.
Was that only games though, or was that more like a rainbow where there's a chunk of games and there's a chunk for regular programs?
It was a general one.
Yeah, and I know that Antic and Analog, they all had like the game section of the magazine, but they were mostly devoted to learning to program, a lot of productivity type stuff.
Yeah, and that was the same with Rainbow, Color Computer Magazine, Color Computer News, Hot CoCo. It was basically the same thing for the CoCo side of things too. So, and the fact that we supported, like at one time we had 5 full color magazines going simultaneously for the CoCo alone in the 83, 84 time frame.
Yeah, it's really impressive.
Yeah. And like I said, we've been trying to figure out what exactly were the sales of the CoCo really. And the only thing I found official is that there was an article in 80 Micro, and I put it in Discord here last week, that by the time summer of 81 and the CoCo got announced in July of 80, didn't go on sale till around October. They had to do some recalls because there were some problems with the RF shielding and a bunch of other things, and some of the early SAMs didn't work properly. So they had to do a bunch of recalls, but by the time the summer rolled around, they'd already sold over 50,000 of them. And this is, pretty early on when sales wouldn't have been as high as they were later. So I don't know if that's an indicator.
What year? I mean, what year is it commonly assumed that CoCo sales peaked?
Well, if we go by Rainbow magazine size, I'd probably say 83, 84. And there might have been a mini boom in 86, 87 when the CoCo 3 came out. But the transition between the CoCo 1 and CoCo 2, that's basically where its final boom, I think, of the original one. Mainly because you had this nice, smaller, more compact CoCo 2 with a better keyboard, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
So
it probably followed the larger trend too. I'm sure that the 83, 84, time period, right, leading up to the crash. I'm sure that that's when Atari sales spiked. The C64 was released in 82, I think. So. Yeah.
I think everybody pretty well peaked. I mean, that's also when, TI and stuff started, for bargain basement prices. Okay, next up, and this is kind of a follow-up from last week where we showed the Return of the Beast demo that Stewart Orchid had written for the Dragon, which is that Xevious clone with 3-voice music on the intro screen and really good scrolling and sound effects. I didn't realize it, but he actually has the source code for it up here, and it's an incomplete game. It's a playable demo, basically. He's getting one level. You can change the color sets, etc. But if anybody wants to try to finish it, or if they want to try to get it to run at CoCo, because apparently it only runs at 50 hertz. So it'll run on a PAL CoCo or a PAL Dragon 3264. It will not run properly on a CoCo with 60 hertz NTSC. So I don't know if anybody wants a bit of an ML project and see if they can actually get it running properly at 60 hertz, but that'd be a cool one to have. And there's some README and there's commented source code and everything else here too. So you can just go download the whole thing and play with it to your heart's content. Next up, we have Mike Powell, who, and I wish Aaron was still on the call for this one here too, because I know he's done this a little bit for the CoCo side of things, but a lot of these front ends they've been making for some of the emulators, so you can have like screenshots and you can have, like musical samples and stuff from games or sound samples and little video clips as well as still images, etc. Mike is trying to build a front end like that for the various emulators, but for the Dragon specifically, and having some unique Dragon titles. And he's got kind of a concept thing here where he's showing some of the games logos on the right hand side, like Airball and a few others. Alcatraz 2 is a Spectra one originally on the CoCo, and he's showing Airball screenshot on there with an old style TV, a Dragon joystick picture in front. But he wants to do a lot of more visually and actually create an entire Dragon 3264 front end for these types of things. So if anybody has done any of this kind of stuff before, and maybe Aaron can get in contact with him for some of the screenshots just to save the guy some time. That may be an interesting project to do the Dragon side of things instead of just the CoCo, which seems to get the line share.
I wonder what front end in particular he's going for. This looks like it could be Hyperspin or it could be CoinOps because they both look sort of similar.
Yeah, he mentions CoinOps, RetroFE, and Hyperspin, etc. So he's kind of, I think, planning on trying to do a bunch of the same one for basically a lot of these front ends.
Right. And because there is so much overlap between Dragon and CoCo games, I'm sure that Aaron, could definitely help out. I'm not really sure. I know that he's uploaded his things to there's some sort of a CoinOps repository somewhere where people upload their various themes and things. But I don't know exactly where that is. We'll have to get with him and find out.
Okay, cool. That'd be good to link the guys up here because, like I said, the Dragon had hundreds of unique games, which we're now starting to port over. The keys are different because of the keyboard mapping inside the actual hardware, which you have to just kind of reprogram a little bit to get around. And if it's joystick, it works exactly the same, so it's not a problem. But yeah, it'd be interesting to get some of those. And then we can, once we get them, fixed up for the CoCo's keyboard, we can actually incorporate those same artworks and logos, etc., on the CoCo side and just add the Dragon games to it and vice versa, so we can actually cross-pollinate. Next one here, we've got a YouTube channel called Contra Epic Core, and they did a long play video of the CoCo 3 Contras game where he actually plays the whole game through from start to finish, wins the game outright in less than 15 minutes, which I've never even come close to accomplishing either. I think I can get to level 3 or 4. So I thought for the people who have not seen the end of Contras, I'd take you down to near the last level and just play the last little bit, about a minute of it. This is also the theme music you guys use in the CoCo show.
Yep, it's a great tune.
Now, is it the same as the Nintendo's, or is it different?
No, it's different. Well, I think it might be inspired by the Nintendo version, but it definitely has its own sound.
And once you win and the credits scroll up, it actually has a new song that if you haven't won the game, you wouldn't have heard before. I don't know if that's from Nintendo or not.
Huh. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's... I've rarely gotten to the end of any Contra game before. They're not easy games.
No. I used to be able to do it in the arcade, the original one, but the arcade one is so different than the Nintendo and the CoCo one. I just thought it was kind of cool because that's not something a lot of CoCo game players would actually have seen, because that's like you said, that's not an easy game to play.
Yeah, I mean, is there really, are there a lot of games in the CoCo library that you can really speed run like that have a definite ending that don't just loop around?
Not a ton. I mean, the CoCo was from the era where people were porting arcade games. So I mean,
Right.
adventure games, obviously you could do that, but as far as arcade games, there's a few, but not a lot. Most of the time you just restart it over with, faster speeds, more
Yeah.
enemies, that type of thing. Nick Marotta actually is one that does tend to put finishes in his games, like Popstar has one, Gatecrasher has one.
Yeah.
And do any of your other ones? I think Rupert Rhythm, you get the concert at the end, don't you?
You do, yeah. And even the one I'm doing now.
Ooh, teasing. Does that mean you have an update?
No, not really.
Oh, okay. Next up,
Well-
now last week we posted that the 10-liner basic programming contest is back up and at 'em. And Jim Gerrie, who's entered these the last few years and won a few times, is just, he's a machine. So he's actually cranked out 3 games already for it in the span of 1 week, which we'll be getting to shortly. But he's also done this one here. This is a port of the MC-10, to the MC-10 of the Pirate Adventure by Scott Adams of Adventure International, which you may remember is some of the original adventure games from Micros. And this one here, he's actually changed it because the original port he did required several cassette files to fit even in the 20K MC-10. So you'd load in part of the game, play it, and then it would load in the next chunk. And he actually managed to crunch it down now, and it's a single load, so you don't have to keep the cassette going. I won't play the actual video because it's a pretty lengthy gameplay, but it's just typical Scott Adams noun verb type adventure game. But you actually got to cram down to fit in 1 cassette file. And then he's got 3 that he's entered in so far this week for the 10-liner contest. Now you notice he's got some line numbers here beyond 10, but that's all remarks, basically explaining instructions and stuff, and that technically does not count against the game because you don't need that to run the game. You can delete those lines and it runs fine. So his first one is kind of a clone of the old Space War, computer space type thing, and of course in the low res of the MC-10 standard semi-graphics mode. I'd like to see what this actually runs like compiled with the new compiler they've got to see how much that would speed it up. But it's a 2-player game. You got the gravity and you shoot each other type thing. And then his second entry is called The Explorer, which is based on a text adventure by Clive Gifford from 1985. So it's another of the text adventure games, similar to Pirate Adventure, except much smaller, only 10 lines. And I believe, if I remember correctly, Jim's doing the 80-line version because there's multiple versions of it, where you have, lines that can't be longer than 80 characters, lines that can't be longer 255 characters, lines that can be anything you can compress and fiddle with the basic, interpreter. You can fool Microsoft with the edit command, for example, to actually make lines longer than 255, etc. So most of his are actually the straight 80 column, the lowest common version of it. So somebody making a comment there?
Yeah. Was just a question popped in my head. Was there ever a port of the Quill to the CoCo?
Who was that by?
The Quill was, oh boy, that's a great question. Is basically an adventure game creator. So it's like an adventure game construction set where you didn't actually have to code. It gave you sort of the parser and everything. It had releases on a bunch of different platforms, and I was just wondering if the CoCo had a version.
I don't think so. There was a couple CoCo unique ones back in the day for making your own adventure games. And
so
then
it looks like it was released on the Speccy, the C64, the Amstrad, Atari 8-bit, everything but the CoCo. Sorry guys.
Yeah, I think probably because we had our own already by that time.
Yeah.
There were several out back in the day, and then there's also a modern version that Evan Wright has shown off, I think at CoCo Fest, where it's actually you write it on a modern system and then it'll generate a TierState Model 1.3 and a CoCo version of that.
Okay.
Using the engine. But yeah, I don't remember the quill being specifically. There was Adv Maker by George Murn, and I can't remember the name of the second one, but there was a couple back in the day. And then his last one here, which he calls Slapshot, another 10-liner, which is basically, I don't know if you call it the same thing in the States. Do you call it foosball? Where you, it's kind of like table soccer?
Yeah.
It's kind of along that line, and it's a 2-player game, and he actually plays against his son here, so not bad for a 10-line basic program. Even got some French in there to be fancy. Nick Marotta, did you want to translate? Or is Nick sleeping already? We are in news now.
Hard to believe that's 10 lines.
Yeah, no, that's pretty impressive for 10 lines.
Better than your average Atari game.
Well, blue is spelled in English for some reason, and in red.
It's in French.
That's right. Yeah, Le Rouge, which is the red, isn't it?
The Reds. Victories, obviously. Yeah, blue is English. Oh, is it Ontario versus Quebec?
This is a bilingual game. I got it. Yeah, this is Quebec versus Ontario, basically.
Yeah. Oh, great.
Or France versus England. Take your pick.
Oh, how funny.
Nice. Good catch.
And anyway, that's all I had for Game On News this week. It's a nice short one. I don't think Michael even had time to fall asleep.
Oh, I think he did.
All right, we want to go into regular news or another commercial?
No, we'll go into regular news. That's way too short to have a commercial.
From around the world, what you need to know. Get caught up on news with L. Curtis Boyle.
And now a Muppet News Flash.
Okay, so first up, we showed Simon had done his Mandelbrot generating video last week. He's done an update to it now, where he's actually got it rendering in about 6 minutes, rewriting it in machine language. I'll just play a few seconds just to show the speed up compared to the basic version we showed last week. And he's still got some more tweaks to do. He thinks he can speed it up a bit more. But I know I like the fractal stuff, but I prefer something like Rescue and Fractalist to use fractals, because I've seen Mandelbrot set so many times since the 80s. It's kind of lost its luster, but it's cool that he's getting it generating that fast, because I remember doing it back in the day in BASIC, and it would take hours to generate one of those things. Next up, Aaron Newcomb from Retro Hack Shack has put up a new video showing how he upgraded his CoCo 3. So he's got an SDC now. He's installed a 639. He installed the 2-meg Boomerang E2 board. He made an RGB to HDMI circuit that also supports the NTSC artifact colors. And apparently that should even work even if you're running it on a PAL-based CoCo 3. So that's kind of a neat upgrade. So he's just goes through a whole bunch of stuff he's been doing here. I won't play the whole video because it's almost an hour, but kind of goes through the layout of the CoCo 3 versus the CoCo 1 and 2. And then goes into desoldering the CPU and installing sockets. Then he decides to run some stuff just to demo it. So here he's got the Zaxxon with the artifact colors going with that little adapter board. And then, of course, kind of, as a tribute to this week's game, he actually ran the Donkey Kong transcode as well, which I think, Boat, that's your favorite game of all time, right?
It's absolutely my favorite game of all time. You got it. You know me too well.
Not as good as the King, but it's all right.
Anyway, it's a really good article / tutorial video of going through the various upgrades that he put in, and then getting the video working out in composite with artifacting and RGB and the whole bit. So it's a cool hardware project. Next up, we have Gerrie Stratton. Now, he put up a blog post earlier in the week here where he's actually, he wants to type in articles or programs from Rainbow or Hot Cocoa or whatever, but he finds it distracting. He has to keep look at the magazine, look back. And now he knows that you can cheat and just load these in off tape or even OCR them. He said that he wanted to experience it like the old days. But one thing that and I know I did this in the old days too for some typing programs. I'd get my brother to read the listing out and I would type it rather than me have to keep glancing back and forth, because that's slower. If he just tells me, I can watch the screen while I'm typing. So what he did is he actually used some of the Mac scripting, and he actually has it read out the code, and then he just types it in listening to the Mac. So I'll play a little bit of the video here, you can kind of just see an example of that. Let's see, turn it up a bit.
Line 50, go sub, 1000, line 60, CLS, paren, 0, close paren, colon, A, equals, 2, line 70, 4, space, N, equals, 2, 2, 10, step, 2, line 80.
Anyway, of course, you can change the rate of speed. You can change the voice if you prefer a different voice that you can hear better, or tweaks with you better. But he actually has it like reading out the line number, saying the word line, like it's not just literally reading the screen. So he actually did a bit of scripting here to make it a bit more easy to understand without having to glance at the magazine. So he did that, and the first version he did here, if it's reading out numbers like data statements, it will read out hex properly. So he had to do a modification, which he released later this week, which now bumps it up to be able to handle decimal and hexadecimal. And the sample he used was a Space Hawk game, which is a machine language game, which is a whole bunch of data statements with pokes, basically from Hot Cocoa magazine. And it's actually quite a good Galaxian style game. But he actually modified it to handle the decimal version of it, and that was the program used as a test on it. So if you're going to get it, make sure you get the latest version. Next up after that, we have Richard Kelly. He's released the very first alpha, beta, whatever you want to call it, of Memory Mirror, which is formerly the extended basic ROM viewer. And basically it'll dump memory out 32 bytes at a time in ASCII format and tell you where it is. Unfortunately, I can't zoom that there. Hopefully it's readable. But you can jump between memory locations, etc. Now, this is not so useful in the ROMs unless you're getting certain bits of text, like maybe the ROM prompts or the input prompt or something. But this would be really good for text adventure games if you're trying to find the verb list or the noun list, etc. Because you can just go dump through and read it. And once you find it, you can just kind of go through the list and make a list of the keywords you need. Because a lot of the games back then, you just had to guess. And of course, everybody did it slightly differently. So it was kind of annoying having to figure out that, this one wants speak and this other game wants talk and etc.
Yeah, that's super useful.
Yeah. That's a lot easier than having to do the, for an X loop print hex or a character string peak, whatever, in a loop, and then trying to pause the right place and I missed it, shoot, I want to scroll that screen, you have to go back. And so this is a lot more user friendly. Next up, this is one that Alan Huffman had posted the links to, and there's a thing called the BBS documentary that was done years ago, I think of 2004 or 5 or something like that. I remember the guy when he was actually researching it, because he found my old CoCo web pages on the Freenet, because I actually had a copy of the BBS I'd written way back in the 80s. The source code is still available on there. And he'd asked me a few questions of it. I wasn't like a big time seller of BBSs, so I didn't get interviewed or anything for the show, but he did grab a few bits of information. And when he published a list of all the different software for the various platforms, he actually did include mine in the list, which was kind of cool. But this used to be a pay, you get the DVD of it type thing. And now it's been released from the original author on YouTube. So it's an 8-part series with a bunch of little extra chapters of other things too. And it goes through the history of BBSing, from the very first history of modems coming to microcomputers and then competing with the internet, or, allowing links to the internet because people wanted to get onto, some of the listservs, etc. It gets into FidoNet. It gets into the whole C versus PKware war between ARC and Zip back in the day. It's a very interesting documentary. And Alan pointed out one clip here in the first one where they're just talking about the various camps of people, running different micros, and basically how they still remember to this day how much each computer hated the other ones type thing. If you had an Atari, you could never touch an Apple. If you had a CoCo, you could never touch a Commodore, etc. type thing. Which, I mean, we still have that a bit today, but it's not as bad. It's more done in jest because we're all retro people now, and we kind of admit that Commodore had really good SID chips in there and that type of thing. But it was just kind of fun and interesting to hear some of the people talking about it. And one of the people actually specifically mentioned the CoCo, whereas most of them were doing the standard Atari and the Tier City Model 1 and 3, which are more well known publicly. So I won't play this whole thing because each episode's like half an hour to 45 minutes, and there's 8 episodes plus there's auxiliary chapters, so it's hours. But if you're into the whole BBSing thing, or if you just want to relive the nostalgia of doing it back in the day with FidoNet and everything else, it's an excellent documentary. I'll just show you what the splash screen looks like and maybe play a little bit of the intro here, just kind of get a feel for it.
We didn't just suddenly wake up one morning and we had the Xbox. We didn't wake up one morning and the internet was there. You know, how did we get there? That's what you want to know about history for.
And that pretty well sums up what the whole series is. But excellent viewing. I would highly recommend this if you have any interest in the history of the whole modem revolution from the early 80s, late 70s, when Hayes came out, the smart modem, etc. Or even the acoustic couplers and stuff before that. I mean, Tandy used to sell those for all their diverse machines. And it was the BBSing time is one that I know Stevie, for example, had missed on the CoCo side. He'd already jumped to the PC at that point. But I mean, that was one of the lifeblood lines of the CoCo back in the late 80s to early 90s, especially. We had an OS9 FidoNet Echo. We had a generalized CoCo FidoNet Echo. Then we had the listserv ones being brought over from the internet that you could read on a FidoNet board if you didn't have access to the internet back then. And it was a lot of fun. There was online games, there was online graphics protocols, multiplayer games where you take turns, multi-line BBSs with multiplayer, which even the CoCo supported. And we, of course, had our own FidoNet compatible one with Ribs, written by Ron Byler and Charles West. Bill Noble contributed to some of that as well. So there's an awesome history to go through the whole thing. I highly, highly recommend it if you're interested in that kind of thing. Next up, and this is the Michael Furman special today. And he started a new blog to replace one that he'd shut down a few years back because of spam and trolling, etc. And since Michael's actually on the call, Michael, if you're going to explain what the blog is, what you plan to use it for, what its goals are, etc.
Yeah,
if you
well,
want me to click on
kind
any
of,
of these links, just let me know.
Yeah, it kind of says up on the corner just for, you know, talking about all my hobbies, including CoCo and retro computers and audio stuff, various audio stuff that I'm doing because I like to build audio circuits. So, but in this case, about 2 weeks ago, Ron Klein, who does CoCo Pi, reached out to me and said, "Hey, I want, you know, can you make a version of Nitrous 9 EOU, the latest one, for the CoCo 3 FPGA?" So I was working on that, and I was also, you know, I came up with an idea for a couple projects, and one of them is I'm still working on it, but I was trying to get it running on the CoCo 3 FPGA, and then I found out that Cisco didn't work. So the first article is I made some modifications to that, and the second article is not CoCo 3 FPGA, but it's emulator. So, you know, I started up the blog to, you know, as I am working on various things, it sort of encourages me to finish it and document it and write it down. So this is now live on my main webpage, www.ocs.net.
Okay, and I will mention that the some of these modifications you made to Cisco and stuff here, we'll be incorporating them in the 6.1 release, which is we're tentatively shooting for late March, early April for coming out. There's a new version of the control panel, and we're going to try to get Todd Wallace's weather reader working in there as well. So we're going to try to incorporate a lot of these updates. I know Bill's working on stuff. I'm working on stuff as well. So we'll try to get all this stuff in there. But thanks for doing that, because I don't have a CoCo 3 FPGA, and neither does Bill. So we can't really test any of that stuff. So thanks for A, finding the bug, and then B, even going further and actually fixing it.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm always handy at, you know, going in and hacking around in other people's software. So I just figured
that's what the whole Nitrous 9 project is, basically.
Yeah. So, you know, I figured that, you know, I've been talking back and forth with Curtis and Bill quite a bit about CoCo 3 FPGA support. And as some people here on CoCoTALK will say, it's kind of like a dead platform because it's hard to obtain the hardware. You know, it's a little bit obscure. So I figured, what the heck, I'll just go find a way to fix the bug. And, you know, that's just like Bill does the Matchbox one. I can. Yep. So what my plan is for that, and I have an article that I've started writing for this, is sometime in the near future I'm going to have what's called a I'm not referring to this particular article. Actually, if you go to the other one, on this one, a project that I'm still working on. I have this thing called the Obsolete Computer Systems EOU Customization Pack. I'm actually writing a piece of software that I can distribute a floppy disk, and I have the ones that I have here on this article are just like they're working examples, but they're not the CoCo 3 FPGA one. These are just for MAME. But in EOU, you can install different kernels, and I'm actually writing a piece of software that basically, I mean, it's just basically just copying files, but it tells you, hey, this boot pack is for this. Do you want to install it? You know, kind of an installer type of thing. And I'm going to include these ones I have here, which are for MAME. So the instructions here walk you through setting up MAME to work with DriveWire, which is not something that's in the stock build. So you attach a floppy disk image, you run the installer, and then you run swap boot, and then you reboot, and boom, you have DriveWire running. So I want to not be in the business of redistributing EOU. I can actually distribute my installer disk with the packs in it and instructions, and you download the stock EOU, and then you can use my disk with the instructions and scripts and everything to do the customization yourself. So that's kind of the idea. I'm not quite. I have an article halfway written for that. This page would be the canonical instructions for how to use that.
Yeah, and to be honest, that's something that Bill and I were planning to do too. But we hit the problem where some of the installs of certain things take bigger than a regular floppy disk image could handle. And of course, we had that bug in the driver for EmuDisk where the second hard drive didn't work properly. It would start corrupting files and doing all kinds of stupid things. Now that that's been fixed as of 6.01, we were planning on going the same direction for doing installs of the next versions of EOU. 6.1 might not be this way, but 7 for sure will, where you actually just keep your existing one. Because right now we've been giving you instructions like copy all your personal settings off, and any custom projects you're doing, copy them off somewhere else and restore them back on after you install the new EOU. And now we're going to make it an update installer, kind of like you're doing here with the swap boot. And we'll be able to handle like even a hard drive sized install. You have a program that takes 4 meg because it has graphic files and sound files or whatever else. You can actually just do it the same way that you're doing here. And also, I'd like to thank you, because the whole point of me creating swap boot was that people could do this. They can customize their own. We'll give a couple of common distributions with it. But if you have certain custom hardware you wanted to add, or you just have your system set up differently than Bill and I chose as the defaults, that you can just literally install these and then run swap boot and just switch and swap between them as much as you want for custom settings. And that's exactly the type of purpose that we created swap boot for. And I'm really glad you picked it up and ran with it, because I think that's one of the best ease of use things we've added probably in the 6.0-6.01 era, was adding the swap boot utility.
Yep. And I've written because I'm not really that great of an assembly language programmer. I'm just I'm really rusty. But C is fine. So I've written in C, and it's I didn't use cross compiling. I wrote the whole thing on my CoCo 3, either MAME or using the tools in EOU to actually build it, and that's actually a lot of fun. Actually programming on the CoCo, not using normally I use cross compiling tools or whatever. So sounds like there's some room for us to coordinate on this kind of customization, on this this kind of customization thing. And because it's not all assembly language, it'll be a little bit more approachable to people to actually see what the thing does and how it works.
Yeah, I think we have to do a video presentation of some of these features. Robin and I have talked about doing this, but he's been kind of busy, so I haven't had a chance to talk to him, because we were planning on doing either a live record and then put it up, or maybe a pre-record version of kind of going through some of the new features, including the swap boot. And to take your cue there about writing it, your installer stuff in C, swap boot itself is written in BASIC 09. I didn't use assembly for that either.
Oh, wow. Cool.
So
yeah, I don't really know BASIC 09. Maybe I should learn it, but I know how to do all the basic stuff in C pretty well. So that was easier for me. Yeah,
and that's the nice thing. I mean, we have a bunch of languages to choose from, and you can pick whatever you like. And whether you're rendering an emulator or a cross assembler, cross compiler type thing, I mean, you can do it in any of them. And if you have a large project, you can just, run an emulator, overclock the CPU to like 89 megahertz, and, it'll pack a basic 9 program or compile a C program in like seconds. So it's a really nice system for doing that. But no, I think you and Bill and I should get together. I would like to come up with some sort of standardization, like a file that can read scripts or something, and also have some sort of GUI to make it really easy to use for doing installs off of the second hard drive image onto the main if you want to install like a new game.
I mean,
or
this could just as easily be distributed in a hard drive image. And I do have like a manifest file so that you can just add. This was one question I kept having. I kept not understanding with swap boot was how does it know what the things are for? And it's basically for the name. And probably a better way to do that is to have like a manifest file that has some fields in it that says this is for DriveWire, this is for emulator, this is something. But we can talk about those details later.
Yeah, it was something I was thinking of doing. This was just kind of the quick hack to get it working, and I just named the files enough that you could tell what they were for. But once you get into complex things like this is my special boot for the speech sound pack that's overclocked with the DriveWire, Python version plus, you keep running a room trying to name all that in the name. So yeah, it was something I was planning on doing too. But this was a hack just to get it so you could swap the boots easily. Like I use it pretty well daily, switching between emulators and the real CoCo because I might do a large assembly on the emulator to get it done fast, copy in the SD card, throw in the CoCo, and I boot literally the same hard drive image, and just do the swap boot so I get back to 80 column RGB instead of the composite defaults. And maybe we'll have to revisit that. I mean, maybe we should take a poll at some point, like how many people really are running with just plain old composite 40 column. Like maybe I should default to RGB and not.
I hate typing mon-type R all the time, but I know I can change it in the EMV file if I really wanted.
Yeah.
So now
and
that I know
honest, like the emulator ones, we default to RGB 80 column because that's what you're going to be running it in anyway. So yeah. Anyway, thanks for starting the blogs. Thanks for doing the extra swap boot stuff here, because that was something Bill and I had in our checklist, was to actually get onto the CoCo 3 FPGA and do full DriveWire support in the boots as well. Just hadn't gotten to it yet, and you did for us, so thanks.
Yeah, so I haven't even sat down to make all of the boot packs that I want to make yet. I only have done the basic DriveWire one, and I have a DriveWire boot one, and then in order to be a complete solution, you have to go farther, as you said, and include kernel boot tracks and for different situations, and scripts that you can run, so you can you understand it actually needs to be like an installer thing. So I'm just really scratching the surface here. A lot of things we can do with this.
Yeah, I mean, there's already a utility for doing the kernel tracks in there. KUtil does it quite nicely. In fact, I use that to make all the distributions, but we can definitely have it called from an installer so that you don't have to learn it all yourself, because we want to make this both powerful for people like you that do know the inner workings quite a bit, but we want to make it dead simple for people like Bo or Ron that they want some special. I want this one with a high-res joystick interface, or I want this one with RGB versus composite because I have some game I want to run that requires composite from the CoCo 1 and 2 days or whatever. We want to make it just as easy as possible.
And I like writing tools that people can use, like PyDriveWire is a good example. So anyway, Curtis, sounds like we should wrap this discussion up here, but I plan to work on.
I'm a little excited about it. That's why I talked about it longer than the normal. So.
Yep. Nitrous 9 EOU takeover of this show.
Well, that's the way it should be, but yeah.
I'm sure I'll have more articles coming, because I have many that are halfway written that I need to finish up. So
yeah, it's just good to see you getting your blog going again, because it's been, I think, 5 years since you last did one?
Yeah, because people were spamming the heck out of it and emailing stuff and whatever.
Yeah. Anyway, the next is kind of a double post here, and this one we'll get some input from anybody who's viewing at home and anybody that's on the panel. So Jim Rain, the current president of Glenside, had put up a proposition of kind of getting back a little bit to the old days, because right now the Glenside online meetings through Blue Jeans are basically just business meetings. That's like going through treasury reports and secretary reports and maybe changing the constitution of the club or that type of thing. It's been very business oriented. And one thing Jim said he missed from the old days, and some other people have mentioned this before in the past, is that, an actual club meeting back in the day, that was just a small part of it. I mean, they also do a meeting like that during CoCo Fest, but that's like a separate thing. The club members can go off and they have their, read the minutes, treasury reports, and all that stuff too. But the CoCo Fest itself is kind of like the bigger club meeting where it's demos and, getting to meet and greet everybody. And so one thing he wanted to try to bring back as an experiment is to have the call once monthly club meeting to include a demo section before the actual meeting. So people that are there only for the business side of the meeting, they would just come in at the regular, I think it's 7:30 start time. And that would just be the regular meeting you're used to doing now. But people want to see a demo of some new hardware or software, maybe a tutorial, whatever we decide in the future, would come in an hour early and they could watch that. And then if that's all they're interested in, they don't care about, the club's inner workings, they can just skip out after that's done. And if they're a really, gung-ho Glenside person, they can stay for both. So he posted, Jim Gerrie posted an article about it here, just kind of explaining the whole concept of it and doing the demo type thing, which you can read on the Glenside, glensideccc.com webpage. And then he also put a poll up on the Glenside group in Facebook here to ask about some suggestions and of what you would like to see demoed. So a couple things they got here, they got CoCo connection options for BBS, IRC, etc., using drive wire, Wi-Fi, etc., which we've covered various projects doing it there. Some people, of course, just want to do the business meeting straight through. And I think the solution to that is if you make it a hard time out that, if you start the demo at 6:30, it has to be done by 7:30 so that people aren't just hanging around waiting if that's not what they're into. If we can make it, strict enough that you stop at 7:30, and if you have to do it the next meeting to carry on because you couldn't quite get it done, that's fine. Then they were talking about printing options and development platforms, tool chains, CoCo Media. That's some of the suggestions. He's actually got an ad option there. So if you can think of another subject you'd like to get covered at a club meeting or demoed, please feel free to go to the Facebook group there. You can vote on the existing ones or you can create your own. I personally, I check the Wi-Fi and BBS IRC stuff because that's something I'm interested with. Some of the people like Rick and a few others that are working on networking cards, et cetera here, and then Boat has mentioned before too, it'd be nice if the CoCo could do some network gaming so you can play against other players anywhere on the planet.
So let me ask you a question because I forgive me. I'm just ignorant of almost everything in life, but these are the guys that organize CoCo Fest, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the business meeting part of things is mostly just centered around like looking forward to the next CoCo Fest. I mean, what are we talking about here in the business meeting part of the meeting?
Well, that's other things too. I mean, that's like pre-booking things, deciding if you want to, sponsor guests to come to a CoCo Fest.
But it is all
publishing the newsletter. There's
itself.
other things besides the fest involved.
Well, so the Glenside Color Computer Club does other things where they're booking guests, etc., outside of CoCo Fest. Is that what you're saying?
Well, guests is usually for CoCo Fest, but like say publishing the Glenside newsletter, which is done quarterly.
Right.
That's outside the fest. So they're soliciting for articles and asking you who would like to write a regular, monthly or a regular issue article that is published every time, like Rick Euland, I think is planning on doing. So there's various things. Plus it goes through finances and blah blah blah. I mean, COVID's been kind of weird because normally they had a library room that they'd meet at in Chicago, and then people would have joined in blue jeans with the live meeting. And of course now it's all virtual. But
and who's going to bring the donuts?
Yeah, important.
It just seems like if the entirety of the reason for this club to exist is just to organize and talk about the next CoCo Fest, then why not just make it all about CoCo Fest, and then all of the extra stuff, why not just push on to CoCoTALK and not even bother with it within the confines of the computer club, at least while it's virtual. And once it starts to meet in person again, of course, everything changes and you can have people coming in. Of course, that's a great time.
Well, I think one of the reasons is that they were finding with the original non-virtual before COVID was that it was usually there was a couple of regulars that would show up virtually, and then it was everybody else that was local. And I think they found that with everything virtual, I think there's an opportunity to get people that normally did not get that involved are actually getting involved now. I mean, Jim Brain being elected president, I think, is an example of that. And also, I think they want to try to expand, like make this into a club again, rather than just a CoCo Fest sponsor event. So that's why they've been getting the newsletter out, trying to get it back out on time. They're soliciting much more for articles. I mean, the last one that Stevie did, which was a huge one, it was 70 pages or something like that. It was like a magazine. So, I mean, they're trying to expand the scope of what the meeting covers.
Right. I just wonder, because CoCoTALK is sort of, has become what it is in terms of the way that we were able to virtually meet. I think that something like the GCCC should differentiate itself in some way, or else you're just going to be repeating content, right?
That's possible. I mean, the newsletter is unique to them. I mean,
Right.
none of the rest of us are.
But I mean,
creating-
is the newsletter something that you need to get together and meet about?
Sometimes, because sometimes you'll get submissions from several people who are actually working on an article on the exact same thing. So you don't really want to publish 4 articles all on how to
Right.
attach
But
an
it's
MP2
somebody
to
that's just walking in off the street. That doesn't sound incredibly exciting to come in and talk about 4 people's contributions to a newsletter.
No, I guess that would be true. I mean, it's a necessary function,
Yeah,
but it is
yeah,
an
it's
exciting one for an
necessary.
average user.
I
no.
just wonder, like, I think, at first I was like, oh my gosh, just get on with the business meeting. That sounds horrible. But at the same time, if the main purpose of this club is to organize CoCoFest and to publish a newsletter, maybe that should be what the meetings are about, and then push all of the other demos and exhibitions and things like that to a program that's already established online and a virtual presence like CoCoTALK.
Yeah, that's
To be
true.
fair,
I mean, the one thing I would say is that
CoCoTALK-
go ahead, Nick.
CoCoTALK is not really officially part of GCCC and vice versa.
Sure,
Like,
I understand.
We're not.
Well, in
So,
format,
I mean,
if you've got an hour-long demo, it sounds like this would be the place to do it. Where CoCoTALk really, you end
Yeah,
up
do you
with
want
an
to add
8-hour
another full
show.
hour to the 4 or 5 hours we're ready to do just to get a demo out of the way?
So maybe, yeah, positioning it that way, where if you have a long form demo, something like this club would be the place to do it. That makes sense.
Yeah, because I think basically if we've done long form demos on CoCoTALK, we've usually had to make that a separate show in the evening, like an after
Right,
dark or something,
right.
because it's just a bit too much to go through. The other thing is too is that some of the people that attend the Glenside meeting are not on Facebook. They don't watch CoCoTALK.
That's insane.
True. But, but I understand that point of view too, that some people can't make it. And Blue Jeans lets you call in an audio only, and that would make a terrible demo because you'd just be hearing things.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the fact that you can actually get some interactivity with people that don't normally frequent the Facebook and the YouTubes, etc., can actually join in like you would if you were actually at a CoCo Fest type thing. I think that helps encourage the community as a whole to include some people that maybe don't get included on a strictly CoCoTALK type show as it is now. And it's interactive. I mean, you could ask questions live during the demo type thing, kind of like we do when we have a demonstration of something on CoCoTALK, but it's a long form one. And I don't think CoCoTALK wants to go schedule one episode every month where we're doing a full 1 hour long demo of something.
It would be great if the powers of both groups could get together and sort of divvy up the content, and say, listen, if you've got something that is, a 10-minute thing that you want to show off, go on CoCoTALK. But if you've got something that's more in depth, that's going to take an hour, do the GCCC. And that way people are not tuning in and seeing duplicate demos, and it gives you a reason to join both groups.
Yeah, and I mean, the fact that Jim's active in our Discord and he's also the president, it means he definitely would know and kind of be able to put the finger on that to make sure that does not happen. And actually, he's made some comments here. He said, you also have to understand that putting this stuff on CoCoTALK would favor one media outlet over others. That is true. And he apologized. He had to get to a computer
That's
to
the
comment.
nature of the beast. That's just how it is.
Yeah. But I think Glenside wants to remain a bit of a unique entity in some ways too, because they can do some things that CoCoTALK can't. I mean, they actually have some finances because they have dues that people pay to become part of the club. Of course, they are the organizers of CoCo Fest, the organizers of the newsletter, which is basically our magazine these days. So, yeah, I definitely take some of your points to heart on it as well. You definitely don't want to duplicate stuff where we do a 15-minute demo of the exact same thing that Glenside's going to do in 2 weeks, so for an hour. You would maybe advertise it, if you want to join the Glenside meeting, we're going to be demoing blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And if you have any questions, you can ask them.
Is this something that is open? Is Glenside open to everybody? I mean, do they post, is it done through Zoom like CoCoTALK, or is it?
It's done through Blue Jeans, which is
Blue
kind of a
Jeans.
Zoom-like thing, yeah.
Okay.
It's video and audio, and you can call in on a regular phone. You don't have to have a computer even to do it. You can call in on a landline if you wanted to.
Anybody can join. You just can't vote if you're not a member, but anybody can join. And
And anybody who's attended CoCo Fest and paid the admittance fee to CoCo Fest is automatically a member for that year. So, which is why we're encouraging you and Aaron to come out one of these years whenever we get.
Well, here's what I suggest. I suggest that if these guys want to keep all the goodies for themselves, that CoCoTALK develops their own fest, and then we take over And then we basically create a war.
I love the
between
way
the
that
two.
Boat just fosters community spirit.
Yeah. I hope you're wearing asbestos underwear, man.
On this edition of Poke the Bear.
I'm just kidding. I'm just
So
kidding. We
read
don't want
Jim's
to be-
third comment there.
Third one, GCC does not want to get into the drama that envelopes the CoCo community recently. Yeah, I agree. I think they want to remain neutral and just
Fight.
Anyway, I do encourage people. I would like to see this succeed. I would like to see a long form demo, interactive questionnaire between the people watching. I think if they keep it strictly at those times, like if somebody knows their demo is going to go long, start earlier. Don't bump the business meeting, because people that just want to get the business stuff of the club done don't want to sit there for an extra half an hour waiting for a demo to end. So that part, I do agree with what John and a few others have said. I think you have to keep it fairly strict on the timeline.
Yeah, well, you just
people are
front
not
load it.
wasting their time for parts and registers.
You front load the business meeting stuff. You put that right up front, and then you open it up afterwards. And the people that want to get out can get out.
Or it works either way. I think Jim's kind of favoring the other way, but it doesn't matter because as long as it's, fairly strictly scheduled.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with doing it the other way is that it kills any sort of interactive spirit. Like if you've got a demo going on and you've got a lot of people with questions, you don't want to shut those people down because you're worried about coming in under the thing. Versus if you go with the business meeting first, you have the Robert's Rules of Order that keeps everything flowing, and then you open it up. Anyway, that's just my opinion.
Yeah, well, it's worth discussing. Like maybe that should be flipped. Maybe that would work easier. I mean, the business side can also go longer than normal too. Depending.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
Like all the rebooking for CoCo Fest trying to get around COVID. I'm sure those meetings lasted a while.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Anyway, please take part in the poll. If you can think of any options for a demo you'd like to see from some of the new hardware software that's been discussed in the last 6 months or whatever that's not on this list so far, feel free to add an option. Maybe some other people go, oh, I'd like to see that too, and they'll click on it too, so we can kind of get an idea where we want to take this for the first version of this. And maybe this doesn't work out. I don't know, but it's worthwhile trying, I believe. Next up, near and dear to my heart, it's Nitrous 9. So this is JoAnn Donaldson, who's been learning to relearn C under Nitrous 9 the CoCo and using Jeff's new DCC compiler, which is a bit more advanced version of the original C compiler. And she hadn't actually used make files in quite a while and kind of forgotten how to do it. And she finally got everything straightened out. She's been asking questions the last few days. And she actually created a little text file about how to create them so that you can actually set them up nice and easily if you don't have the full C compiler documentation, which is like pages and pages of stuff that you can download from the archive. But this is kind of like a quick and dirty, what you basically need to basically get it set up to do a very quick C compile. And the C compiler with the make file is actually quite smart, as long as you set your date and time correctly anyway. Because if you have a multi-part project that has, say, 6 C source files and you only change one, it won't recompile the whole darn thing from scratch. It'll just recompile the one file you updated and then link them back with the previous ones you've done. So the compile times are much faster. So that's a nice little handy reference for any of you doing C. And I know I've had a few people that have mentioned on the show and even in Discord that they've just gotten back into C and are starting to get into where JoAnn's at. And this is a nice, quick one that they can share back and forth and get into it. And anybody else is interested in learning C on the CoCo, this is a nice, quick way to learn how to do the make files without having to go through the entire C library manual. Next, after that, the Retro Channel on YouTube released a video that shows how to add component, not composite video to a CoCo 1 and does a brief explanation of video signals. This is from a fellow Aussie of Nick's. And we've covered a couple of his. He actually had a couple of videos that came out in September, so we've been kind of following. He did one last week on doing some stuff for the CoCo 3. This is specifically on the CoCo 1 and 2, and he actually gets the whole component video working. And this is more than just a tutorial on doing this upgrade board. This is also a tutorial on how video signals in general work. Like what is the difference between RGB versus NTSC versus PAL versus component versus composite, et cetera, et cetera. So it digs deep. If you want to learn how all this stuff works, it's a great video. And it's 23 minutes long, so I'm definitely not going to play it here, but definitely check it out if you're into that kind of stuff. Next, we're on to the couple MC-10 stories. So the first one here is from Robert Sieg. And he's put up a program for the MC-10 on the Facebook group you can download that extends his text reader program. We mentioned this before. He actually had ported I think the King James Bible over, and basically it does it in 6K chunks and reads it directly off the SD card, kind of bypassing the built-in DOS because it doesn't handle files of the size of a Bible, for example. So he's been extending that now. It works with the MCX 32 board, the SD card reader board. So basically, it's still a work in progress, but now he's been adding some extra utilities for it. And now he's going to be adding a bunch of public domain books by Thomas Paine, Edgar Allan Poe, etc. So you're basically going to get almost kind of like the free library of books that you can get on that you can actually read on your MC10. But he's going to have stuff where you can like jump ahead chapters and you can save where you left off reading. So when you bring it back up, it just brings it back up to where you left off, so you can continue reading a book. It's kind of like the Amazon Kindle, I guess, for the MC10, basically is what it's turning into. So that's a pretty cool project. And then the second MC10 one is Jamie Cho, who's been involved with a lot of compiler stuff here. And he's done an addition to his MC10 tools now, which includes an experimental at this point, but it seems to be working from what I've heard. Basic to C10 command. Now C10 is the cassette file format that's used for the MC10 for loading cassette files. And what he's got here is you can actually take this, you can take a basic program and just run it through his little utility, and it automatically creates the cassette file for you without having to go through some external stuff. And he's been tweaking it and adding stuff so it handles both ASCII versions of basic programs and tokenized ones. It'll automatically do those both correctly. And you can go download that and give it a shot. Like I said, it's kind of in the early versions right now. So if you find any bugs, please report them to Jamie on the MC10 Facebook group. But the MC10 has been definitely getting a lot of developer love lately with the compiler and now this and a few other utilities too. So great time doing an MC10. Right, Ron?
Wake up.
I don't have the list of who's on the call, so I don't even know if he's still on, but I thought I'd give him a shout out. Next up, last week, and this is onto the Dragon news now. So last week, DragonPlus Electronics, we played the video of him showing the installation of the MSX2 Plus board, which is a sound chip and the sprite chip from the MSX2 console on a Dragon. So he's got a couple of videos here. He's got a couple of Paris Rats games, the AGD games that are ported from the AGD engine for the Spectrum, showing some of the new capabilities here. So I'll play a little bit. So this is Diamond Geezer. This one actually has the sound redone and the graphics redone. So I won't play the whole game or anything, but we'll show a bit of it.
I'm doing this because I want to show you what happens on the 6847 screen. Okay, so the game's fired up on the V9.
And the board has its own video out, so you actually have a second monitor hooked up.
On there to get some better sound. But on the 6847 screen, you can see that interference.
And you can hear the music already coming up from the board.
Because the processor is being switched into fast mode, which steals time from the 6847 to speed on the tripod. And then I'm going to play a little bit of this game and try not to grumble.
But here you can see some of the sprite hardware. You can hear the multi-channel music in the background. All controlled by the 0.895 megahertz Dragon. And this board should work, possibly with some slight modifications to get it fit in the case with the CoCo 1 and 2 as well. So it's kind of an alternative to the CoCo VGA. So that's one game that Pear's ported over, and he goes through and demonstrates like different screens and et cetera, et cetera. So if you want to see the full gameplay, head over to the YouTube channel and the links. And then this is one, I think we've demoed this briefly before, but this is Foggy, which is another one of the AGD games. A bit more colorful. Now, the sound he hasn't got fully working on this yet. But, I mean, for CoCo 1, 2, Dragon 3264 level hardware, this has got some pretty decent graphics. That clicking is not the game sound, that's his keyboard. But really smooth, really colorful. Now, going further along that line, he also did another demo here, which is written by Paris Surratt as well. And this is to go through the various video modes that the MSX2 board has. Now, I did not know that they even had all these modes, so some of this is new to me. But he's got some pretty impressive. Now, these are just still pictures using the different color depths and different resolutions. So I'll let him run the menu here, and you'll see what the options are.
So that you could start to use BASIC on the board. In fact, I'll just do that first of all, so because I can run the other program from that.
And this is a driver that tells the Dragon to switch even its text output to the MSX card versus the built-in VDG. And then you can see there you get the OK prompt from BASIC, so now you're typing on that.
So basically, that display is now replicating. We can have it any color we want, but it's blue at the moment. If I do a DIR, we get the drive. I can do a CLS. Oops. Not fit much on the screen, but over here
you can see that showing it in both. Here he's running an 80 column mode.
Represented in
So I'll just pause this here because, like I said, I wasn't too familiar with the MSX2 hardware as far as the video display. I knew it had sprites and stuff. But this is running stuff. You got PAL, RGB, and you've also got YJK. Now, some of you hardware video types might know. I don't know what YJK is. Is that a certain color mapping thing, or what is that? Or CMYK? Maybe that's a different alternative name for it. I don't know. But you've got options where basically you can do like the MM1 used to have. You can do the interlaced modes. And if you look at, if it says one single frame, that's just a regular 60 hertz refresh or 50 hertz refresh for PAL. And then if you see interlaced frames, that's where it does, half the scan lines on one scan down and then does the alternate half the second. So you're getting like 25 or 30 frames per second. So you get a bit of flicker, but you get a lot higher res. And going through the various modes here, 512 by 212, 16 color mode, and 256 by 212, or 256 by 424, 256 RGB colors. And these last ones here actually do up to 256 by 424 with 19,268 colors, which is beyond the CoCo 3 by a long shot. So it's got some pretty impressive pictures on here. Now I'll just kind of skip ahead to the main ones, just to kind of show you what the best mode is. Let's see here. So we're almost getting to photographic quality here on a 1980 era hardware with the MSX stuff added. Now, obviously, you'd have to do a pretty specialized arcade game in order to, it'd have to be something that you're not moving too much of the screen because, this is a lot of data to move around. So running at 0.895 megahertz, trying to do all this mapping and stuff, and then actually trying to draw everything would take a fair bit of time because that's a ton of memory to move. Now, the sprite chips and stuff will help because you can just load the sprites up and then just tell the chip, you go move it over here at this speed, at this angle type thing. So you can definitely do some, shoot 'em up type things, but for doing some, screen scrolling and stuff, I don't know if it fully supports that or not, but it's pretty impressive results. In fact, if I remember, and Rick Hewlin or some of the other people that might have fiddled with the MM1 more than I did, didn't they have one of these types of pictures with a stopwatch on it too as one of the demos on the MM1?
That thing's been everywhere. I'm not really sure where it came from, but yeah, it's familiar.
I seem to recall this one when they were running the demos. Paul was running the demos at CoCo Fest or even Rainbow Fest before that this was one of the images I think they actually used in M1 to show off the 256 color mode with a 16 million color palette. And it's really cool to see what that card's capable of. There's a ton of opportunity there. And once they get it running on the CoCo 1 and 2 as well, so you can get all this kind of power and sprites and multi-voice sound that doesn't slow the CPU down. I think you can make some pretty darn impressive games with it. Next up for the Dragon, we've got Steve Goodwin, who has done an update to the EMF emulator. So this is an online Dragon emulator. It's kind of like, what's the CoCo one that's online? There's a CoCo 1 and 2, and X-Roar, I guess, has got a version of this too. This one actually has a full debug mode enabled in it, so you can actually have it, print the CPU instructions and what the registers are all containing while you're running, kind of like what MAME does in debug mode. So he's actually got it linked up here. The post talking about it's on the Dragon group in Facebook. And here's the actual emulator itself. And I've got it, the update currently shut off, so it's not updating this because it actually slows the machine down a little bit. But now that we're in the news, I can actually turn it back on. And you can actually see the code live running in BASIC here, waiting for you to press a key on the keyboard. So if I did like a print H variable or something like that, you can actually watch it jump around and, it'll do the typical. I'll have to play that Mavis Beacon there to think boat here because I suck at typing. You can watch the BASIC interpreter and even bouncing back into lower memory addresses to grab variables that BASIC uses live. And then you can stop and step it through a single, it's much like the MAME debugger, not quite as powerful as the MAME debugger, but it's pretty good to do this on an online, right in your browser type thing. So for those of you who want to try different Dragon stuff, and I think he's added the option on this latest version that you can actually click and drag any file with a BAS extension, like a basic source code file. And I believe this works with both tokenized and ASCII, though I'm not positive, but you can actually drag that file onto the browser window on top of the green screen where the emulator is, and it'll actually mount that tape or whatever and load it in for you. So you can actually use this to debug Dragon programs without having a Dragon or even firing up an emulator, just your browser. And I would assume if your phone's powerful enough, you should be able to do this on a phone. So that's a pretty cool thing. Definitely play around with it a bit and let me know what you guys think about that. I thought it was pretty cool. And then the last one I've got, and this is a Ron Delvaux special. Now, is he on the call?
Looks like he has left.
Okay, so I guess I'll cover this. So he put up a thing in his Rainbow, about Rainbow magazine, which of course was the premier magazine for the CoCo back in the day. One of quite a few of them, but it was definitely the biggest one and probably the most common. And he basically had asked, if you subscribe to Rainbow, post what you liked about the magazine. And he actually got quite a few comments. And some of them are pretty interesting. It was like people telling what their favorite parts of the magazine or certain things they like doing in the magazine. Like, you know, some people like the ads, some people like, you know, typing in programs, some people like the tutorials, the adventure game contests. And then people are also mentioning stuff that they had published in it and stuff that they recognize some of the people in our group that have had stuff published in it. So it's actually just kind of interesting to see the various flavors of how and why people liked Rainbow magazine back in the day. And there's quite a few interesting ones in here, like the CoCo Gallery, which I mean, Stevie was, you know, helping promote our own version of that we have these days, where you can, you know, draw a picture on a CoCo 1, 2, 3 Dragon or MC-10 and post it on the Discord group. And Ron's also got a separate group for CoCo artwork too. So some people really enjoyed that. You know, game reviews, the people into telecommunications like the November issues, because you know, Rainbow had themed issues every year. Certain months would be specific things. August was games issue. November was telecommunications. September was education, etc. Turn of the Screw, which is Tony DeStefano's hardware projects, and you know, also the head of Dist Electronics that made a ton of hardware for the CoCo back in the day. Mentioned that he got it, you know, for a free year because it, you know, in the later part of CoCo life, Tandy actually finally allowed some third-party stuff and actually put in, you know, the cards to get a subscription to Rainbow right in the cases with the CoCo when you bought one, whereas before they would deny any of this third-party stuff even existed. People talking about Dennis Bathory kits, the one-liners, kind of ironic since they're now a 10-liner contest that Jim Gerrie's, you know, trying to win by sheer volume. As a teenager, I'd read it cover to cover. That's something I did. I would reread it cover to cover, waiting for the next month to come out. Even when it was 350 pages long, I did that.
Well, that was That was the real thing. At 350 pages, you're going to like something in there.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
get it.
I mean, I used to read Byte and Creative Computing cover to cover too, but I was a nerd. So, Jennifer mentions this. Go ahead.
I remember sitting on my front porch in the summer with my Rainbow magazine and just reading it, and oh man, it was great.
I remember me being in geometry class, and I hated geometry in high school. And I would just kind of sneak it inside my geometry textbook. And every once in a while, the teacher would walk by, catch me reading it, grab it, take it up to the front and hold it there for the entire damn
that's
the class. So I had to sit there and actually do geometry.
Oh, geez.
That's the word. Oh,
honestly, I was puking almost as much as the cat was, you know.
Then there were layers. So you went through all the good parts. Then you went back through the less interesting parts. And then you kind of skipped through the rest. And finally, you were just flipping through the ads until the next Rainbow came out. So,
yeah. Jen mentioned this magazine helped lead me to the past 26 years as a pro game developer, so it always holds a warm place in her heart. So that was cool too, and that's happened to a few people too, that they got interested in CoCo early on through Rainbow or even some of the other magazines, and then they made computer careers out of it. Some of them in the CoCo at the beginning themselves, and then went on to more modern pastures, and others who just did the CoCo stuff, or others that got into it but not fully enough to become a developer. Maybe they're too young or whatever, but then kept going at it, later on with Windows or the Mac or whatever, and actually made careers out of it. So that's cool too. Talking about the subscription magazines where you didn't have to actually type everything in by hand. BBS section, I remember that myself. Rainbow Check, which is what Jerry Stratton's duplicated with modern tools. Fred Skirbo, who's actually somebody who did a fair bit of educational software, and the Rock Band ones. I remember those. He used to have a program where we would draw 8 different emblems for rock bands like Van Halen and the 38 Special, whatever. Then you type in this basic listing and it would draw them all on the graphic screen. And then I used to take them and animate them a little bit, bounce them up and down along with the beat of the music or something like that. So it's kind of fun. But it was nice. It was kind of nostalgia for me too, because that's definitely how I got started. I did start reading Creative Computing and Byte because we got them at school, but those were very generic to every platform. And there might be one article on the CoCo or one article on an Atari or one article on a Vic 20 or whatever it was type thing. And when we got to the specialized magazines, that's where I started really learning, because then you're seeing a lot of different articles approaching things in different ways. And the CoCo had quite a few magazines. I mean, we did quite well, I think, comparatively with some of the other 8-bit computers at the time. So
Someone's watching something.
Yeah, whoever's doing it.
Okay, guess it's gone.
Thank you. So anyway, it was a nice, and if anybody else has any Rainbow memories, if they want to go contribute to this thread, I think it's kind of neat to get the backstories of everyone that went through that time period. Because I mean, it was in July of 1981 when Rainbow published their first literally line printed single sheet double-sided. That was the first Rainbow magazine. It was a newsletter. And then eventually within 3 to 4 years, it was 350 pages long in color. They were putting the soft records in there to load programs off if you didn't have a tape deck, and they put in scratch and sniff adventure games and iron-ons for your t-shirt with the CoCo cat and all kinds of things. They got pretty fancy later on. And don't forget the other magazine too. I mean, Color Computer News actually beat Rainbow as the first color computer magazine. I think their first issue was April of 81. And then there was Hot CoCo, Color Computer Magazine. And there was other ones that, did a fair bit of CoCo stuff. 80 Micro Journal, 80 Micro itself, several 6-8 Micro Journals, a couple others too. We had quite a bit of magazine support back in the day. So that was pretty cool. And that is it for the news.
Okay. Now what?
So if people want to unmute so they can talk again, go ahead. We had to mute because of the TV bleed.
Now what?
And for anybody in the panel here, I mean, everybody that's still on the call, what was the first magazine for the CoCo that you guys ever saw? Was it like a Tier City Microcomputer News? Because Tandy actually gave it for free when you first bought one, at least in the earlier years. Did people maybe find different ones, like some of the more generic ones like Byte or Creative Computing, then discovered the CoCo through that? Just kind of curious where everybody else kind of came through on the magazines for the CoCo.
Well, Rainbow was the one I purchased.
The only two I ever saw in the stores were Rainbow, and that I remember anyway, were Rainbow and Hot CoCo. So I subscribed to Rainbow, and I bought Hot CoCo whenever I saw them in the store. I don't know why I didn't subscribe to Hot CoCo, but
after a couple of bad girlfriends, I found a Rainbow at the Muse stand. Was kind of a big bulky thing, and I was, needed a computer that wasn't a 99.4A or a C64, and so that's kind of how I ended up in the CoCo. I think it was a big shiny magazine.
Like in my case, I remember when Color Computer Magazine first came out, and I'm trying to remember what date that was. It was early to mid 1983, I think. It was a couple months after Hot CoCo came out. And they actually tried to distribute in some major chains. And like in Canada, they had them at Canadian Tire of all places. This isn't even a bookstore. This is a tire repair shop and sells a bunch of hardware and stuff. Wow. And they had a computer because they were selling Amigas or not Amigas at that point. That would have been like C64s and stuff. They sold a few computers. And for some reason, they brought in Color Computer Magazine right from issue 1. I picked those off the newsstand because they had one little section of the store that actually had newsstand for computer stuff because they were starting to sell computers. That only lasted a few years, but that was the first time I'd ever saw that. I didn't even know the magazine was coming out. CCN, we had a couple guys in the local club because they were the hardcore. Like CCN, Color Computer News, was much more for the hobbyist tinker. That was for the hardware guys, the deep diving software guys. It wasn't many basic programs there. It was more machine language stuff. So that was a good technical one. Hot CoCo, I think, it was created by Wayne Green, the same guy that did the old Kilobaud and, for ham radio people. And he did 80 Micro for the Model 1, 2, 3. And actually that did cover the CoCo until they split off Hot CoCo as a separate thing because they were getting so much demand for the CoCo stuff. And, they already had a 400-page magazine for the Model 1, 2, 3, 16, 12, and everything else. So split it off. That ran for, I think, about 4 years. And then it merged back in 80 Micro at the end. And then, of course, 80 Micro eventually disappeared itself. So I've had experience with pretty well most of the magazines at some point or another. I did buy Hot CoCo and Color Computer Magazine off the newsstand. CCN, I used to borrow off some of the other people in Rainbow. I subscribed just like some other people mentioned. Anybody else?
Yeah, although I was an Atari person back then, anything that was dealing with assembly language and such, I would definitely pick up. And around 85, I did not realize that although I knew that the Commodore machines used the same 6502 core as the Atari, I did not know that the CoCos did not use the 6502 core. So my dad would go to the magazine store once or twice a week, and usually he'd buy me a magazine, and I picked up an issue of Rainbow because there was an article about learning how to use assembler, and I picked it up and took it home, and I was reading through it, and I'm like, wait, this doesn't look familiar at all. So around 85, I guess it was, maybe as late as 86, I picked up a copy of Rainbow, and I do remember reading about it being interesting, and shortly thereafter is when I got my MC-10 and used that a little bit, but that is my limit of Rainbow or any CoCo magazines from back in the day.
Okay, that's cool. I didn't realize you'd actually gotten a Rainbow back in the day.
Yeah, just that one episode, because when I realized that the assembly was completely different and I didn't have a machine with a 6809, I didn't really.
Yeah, it wasn't quite as useful as you'd hoped.
Right. And honestly, I wish I had actually considered, I wish I had gotten a CoCo, because I know a couple people that had them for sale dirt cheap, that I could have picked one up, because I think that learning a different assembly language from the 6502 that I was learning would have been a significant help, especially when I went into later languages like 68,000 and C and other such things.
Yeah, it's always good to see the comparisons too. I mean, you can go between like the Z80 and the Intel 8088, 886 architectures, which are quite a bit different than the 6809 and the 6502.
Yeah.
So you kind of see what the alternatives are.
I didn't know the x86 too well because I had several friends that were older than me, and they were into older machines. Like my one friend actually had a Deck System 20 in his garage, and those people that I looked up to would tell me that PCs are pieces of junk and the processor's terrible in them. Don't touch them. So
in some ways they were. That whole segmented memory and registers was a pain in the butt, but their interrupt controller was awesome. That thing was great.
I mean, I understand them now. I've done actually some programming in them, so I understood them. But when it was time for me to get something else and go and a little bit bigger than the 8-bit, I actually had picked up a Sun 360. So I went a completely different direction on that.
We had a couple people at Rainbow Fest that used to bring the Sun 360. Scott, I hope I'm pronouncing his last name right, Griepentrog, who actually did the STG BBS network and did a lot of programming for the M1 stuff. He actually had a Sun 360 used to bring to CoCo Fest, and he was, it's the size of a small portable fridge or something that we'd bring in.
Yeah.
And then run that hooked up to his MM1 or whatever. And then, from having a big iron back at home type thing, I mean, Bill Noble's, and we've talked about him on the show before too, where we used to run a PDP 1134 at work, which is the size of a full-size refrigerator and takes a huge amount of power. So he actually took it home when we shut it down, and he lived in an apartment at the time. And when he first plugged it in, and he had the big external hard drives that are like, 3 feet high and 3 feet wide.
Dishwasher size.
Yeah. The ones you can unscrew and,
yeah,
get the whole batters out.
Or KO2 or something.
He had 2 of those. He had a 9-track magnetic tape drive, which is the height of a fridge, and then he had the PDP itself. He plugged it all in and turned it on, and literally the lights in the entire apartment block he was in dimmed. He was stuck in so much power, and then he got his power bill at the end of the month, and he never turned it on again. He donated it to one of our technical institutes after that.
Yeah, my friend with the Deck System 20, he actually got one of the smaller PDP 11s, one that was about the size of a refrigerator. And when I was over his house, I told him I wanted it. And he's like, well, I don't know about that. And I'm like, why not? How much do you want for it? He goes, well, I'd sell it to you for $200. But before you do that, here's the power cable. Because this guy was one of my best friends in high school. And he said, here's the power cable. Take it to your dad. Tell him that you want to get a computer and you need this outlet put into your room. And it was a 100 amp plug, 220 volt 100 amp plug. And I take it to my dad and I said, hey dad. He goes, what? And I says, friend of mine, Rob's offering me a computer for $200. And he goes, yeah. And I go, he said that before he'll sell it to me, I need to get an outlet for it in my room. He goes, okay. And I said, well, I need your help installing it. And he goes, okay, what kind of outlet you need? And I showed him the plug because my dad was an engineer. And so he knew electrical engineering pretty well. I showed it to him and I said, well, I need a socket for this. He looks at it, looks at me, and he goes, no. I'm like, yeah, but he goes, no. I'm like, but Dad, no. I'm like, but he's like, the answer is no. So I turn around and I go, Mom. She goes, you heard your father.
That was a house worth the juice at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
But yeah, it was eventually I traded my car for a PDP-11, and I was not allowed to even bring it in the house, let alone plug it in. And that was about 3 months before I got kicked out.
Go ahead, Mikey. You were about to say something too?
Oh, I know this is off topic from the magazine thing, but I was offered some kind of a decked vax at some time, and I was smart enough to know, one, don't have room, two, don't have power. I passed up on it. People were like, but you're obsolete. You're the obsolete computer systems guy. I'm like, yeah, I know better than that.
Yeah, because that's their actual mainframe, isn't it?
I don't know. I have no idea what kind of vax it was, to be honest. I just immediately declined it because I knew I didn't have room, couldn't plug it in. You know, I would have loved playing around with that thing. But
I think we had an 11780 at university, but when I went there in '85, and it was a whole room.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 780 was the large one.
Any other last Rainbow or any other
magazines?
Well, sadly, the end of the Rainbow, I had all of my rainbows in milk crates in the basement of my apartment before I bought this house. And when I dumped them out, they were just a brick.
They got
the
wet.
Newspaper ones? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all the rainbows. I had 2 milk crates full, and they turned into 2 bricks. The size
They
of milk crates.
flooded, got wet or damp, and just turned into a brick.
It wasn't magazines anymore. It was paper mache, is what you're
Well,
saying.
Yeah.
It was
Paper
bricks.
block.
We could build a house on these.
Yeah. Hey, Rick, if it makes you feel any better, I had this same thing happen to me for the Antic, which is a magazine for the Atari. All except for 3 episodes from the entire run. I had them in a plastic crate, and they turned into a solid block of paper. They returned to their wood roots.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Make a guitar out of it.
I think as a kid, I had a subscription to Rainbow for a while. I think I convinced my parents to buy that for me. And then sometime later, one of my Timex Sinclair friends, because I also had a Timex Sinclair 1000. I was in that user group as well. That's the color computer one. He had, I think it's Color Computer News, and he gave me some copies of that. Of course, in my room at the time was piled full of junk, so they all got stepped on and the pages fell off. I probably still have a couple of them, but I remember trying to type in programs from some of those, some unsuccessfully.
Yeah, it's pretty large listings.
I think we got into it a little later. It wasn't until like Christmas of '84 we got our CoCo, and I think at the time it came with a free some deal where there was a free subscription to, I think it was TR City Computer News from Radio Shack, and then shortly after that ended, and then the end of the rest of the subscription was fulfilled with Rainbow, and then eventually I think we got a subscription to Rainbow. But that's my foggy rendition of it anyway.
Yeah, I think a lot of us, I mean, especially if we were teenagers at the time, I mean, the magazines were the way you learned. The manual got you started, but only took you so far. The magazines, they branched out onto hardware projects, software projects, operating systems, languages, kinds of stuff. Not just the games. Those are, a ton of ads and stuff for games too, or type-in games and stuff as well. So they kind of expanded the education of learning the computer itself far beyond what, Radio Shack manuals could do. Even though the Radio Shack manuals, especially the basic ones, are some of the best ever made for a microcomputer.
Yeah, those are amazing manuals.
Absolutely.
It's funny, when I got my CoCo, I don't even remember. I don't even think learning how to program was even on my radar. But when I got the books, I just started following them, and bingo bango, I learned how to program.
Yeah, I did the opposite. I'd already used the PEP and the Apple II Plus at that point. It was programming that really fascinated me because, my parents were helping fund it. I funded some of it from paper money, but I didn't have enough to buy a CoCo because it was $550 for 4K at the time. And they were taking a look. There's an Intellivision, there's an Atari 2600. If you want to play games, it's a lot cheaper to get one of these things. And I go, no, I want to learn to program. That's the whole point here. Like, the games is secondary for me, which I guess proves I was really a nerd.
And now you have a CoCo.
Yeah, I got
Games
offered. We'll buy
website.
you a Atari 2600. And then instead of you having to pay half for this computer, no, I want the computer. So.
Well, if I got mine for games and ended up learning how to program, that proves all the parents wrong who said video games are no good and they won't lead anywhere.
If it makes you feel any better, I used a computer for about 2.5 years for programming and such before I ever played my first game on one.
Now, I know we want to try to... Oh, go ahead, Nick.
I probably spent about 50% programming, 50% playing games. I'd kind of go back and forth as my...
Yeah, me was more like 75-25, more 75 programming, 25 games. I just want to get through, we want to try to wrap this up so that Boat's not late for his own show.
Yeah.
And also a plug again for Boat here that they're going to be doing both the Atari 1200 XL show and the CoCo show, the live recording of for the March.
Thanks, Curtis.
That'll be the cross promotion plug in here.
When you guys gonna do Donkey King?
I think we already did Donkey King. I think that was like CoCo Show episode 3 or something.
I think you did. I'm sorry. Sorry, Curtis. Go ahead.
Well, I just want to wrap up here. I think everybody's kind of said their piece on the magazine, so I just wanted to get through some of the comments because there's been quite a few streaming through the chat here, which I haven't been able to catch up on. So just going through here. Diego says he used Microsystems from Brazil. It had some CoCo articles and listings from time to time. No real CoCo magazines were ever available down there. Canadian Retro Things, which is Ken. He used to live in Saskatchewan too, and he remembers Canadian Tire selling the Coleco Atom. I forgot about that. They did sell the Atom as well. I do remember that. I know they sold the Amiga later on. It was one of the last machines they carried. 6 Eves from the UK said we subscribed, quote, to a Dragon user with our news agent. Then it suddenly went proper subscription only without notice. And I didn't see it again until getting a complete set secondhand several years later. Frederick D. Provencha, who's actually one of our contributors to Nitrous 9, Ease of Use. That's right. That's how I got into Rainbow. Tier City Microcomputer News ended its run and it offered Rainbow to fulfill that year's subscription. Now, that was the free 48-page mini magazine for all of the Tier City computers and the Tandy 1000s that Tandy themselves put out, I think, bi-monthly or something like that. So when they started shutting that magazine down, they actually offered, you could get 80 micro if you have a model 1, 2, 3, whatever. You can get Rainbow if you're a CoCo user. I can't remember what they gave as a subscription, maybe PCM or something for the Tandy 1000. And he said he accepted and was hooked. Rainbow was awesome. Tom Eric Gunderson says, when Dragon user went subscription only and wouldn't send to Norway, I subscribed through some friends of the family in the UK and they sent it to me every month. Oh, so they didn't actually show it on the newsstands after a certain amount of time. I know some other magazines that did that too. They went subscription only, just trying to save money on the distribution, costs of getting it out to newsstands and then having all the returns for anything not sold. And basically, if you're hitting that point, that's usually the death knell. You're not going to last too much longer. So. And Frederico said, my parents refused to buy me a game console. They got me my first CoCo for Christmas, though. My parents actually, thought it might not be a bad idea because it was like literally a third the cost. But I was pretty damn, and I did contribute half the cost myself. I saved on my paper route for almost a year. Originally planning on getting a PEP, and then when I saw the CoCo at Radio Shack and how much easier it was to program graphics, that convinced me. And the Apple was way too expensive. So that catches up the comments from the chat on the magazines, and I don't have anything more to add. So, and I know we want to get Boat out of here on time.
We're ready to run the outro then?
Push the button, Frank.
Yeah, and if there's any last thoughts, we'll pick them up after.
This concludes another episode of CoCoTALK, the world's leading live talk show featuring the Tandy Color computer. For all things CoCoTALK, visit us on the web at cocotalk.live. We'd love to hear from you, Send feedback, suggestions, even segments via email to CoCoTalk@CoCoTalk.live. Consider supporting the show with a purchase of merchandise from our retro swag shop at 8bit256.com. If you'd like to become a patron of the show, click on the Patreon link on our website, CoCoTalk.live. CoCoTalk would not exist without the community, its cast, crew, and contributors. Thanks go to Alan Murphy, Bill Noble, Brian Joyce, Brian Weasler, Curtis Boyle, D. Bruce Moore, Danny O'Connor, David Ladd, Eric Canales, Grant Leedy, James Diffendaffer, Jason Reichard, Jim Brain, Ken Reichard, Mark Bosley, Mark Overholzer, Mikey Furman, Mr. Dave 6309, Nick Marentes, Nick Marotta, Nick Marotta, Nick Marotta, Paul Fiscarelli, Richard Lorbieski, Rick Adams, Rick Hewlin, Rob Inman, Ron Delvaux, Samuel Gimes, Sloopy Malibu, Steve Bjork, Terry Steggy, Tom C., and many more. Please help support the CoCo community. A list of various contributors and resources are available at imacoconut.com. That's IMACOCONUT.com. The original CoCo Talk theme song is copyright 2008 by D. Bruce Moore and Greg Sheeler. The new CoCo Talk theme song is copyright 2020 by D. Bruce Moore. Both are mixed, mastered, and produced by D. Bruce Moore. CoCo forever, people!
And we're back. Final thoughts?
Wow.
CoCo early, CoCo often.
Yep.
Yeah.
And a big plug for next week, 200th episode. Get your videos in, talking about your favorite parts of the show or even favorite parts of the CoCo community as a whole. Basically, it's going to be a celebration. Since we didn't really get a full 40th anniversary celebration, you can celebrate the 40th anniversary of the CoCo itself or celebrate the 200th episode of CoCo Talk. You pick your favorite moments from the show, pick your favorite moments from CoCo history, and just send them in as quickly as you can so we can include them on next week's montage.
Doesn't matter how long you've been here, even if you've been here only for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And since much of the country is going to be frozen and snowed in this week, you have plenty of time.
Exactly.
Right.
Assuming your internet still works. I mean, there's a bit of problem there, but
yeah,
exactly.
And don't forget Stevie's plea for doing the chant. Download the video, download the audio, play it on your headphones, and record your chant and send that in.
And also, if you're artistically inclined with Color Max, Coco Max, etc., then send in some artwork. We have the page set up. Ron has a page on Facebook. You can contribute to it either way, and we can show them off on the show here, type thing. So I know we've got some talented musicians in the group. I know we have some talented artists in the group. I'm not either of those, but as anybody's heard me play at that CoCo Fest will attest.
Here it's better than your soldering.
And a last minute plug, the CoCo show and the Atari show at the Twitch TV channel for the Amigos.
In 7 minutes.
Yeah, let's go check that out. Boat had to leave early because he actually has to get set up for the show there. So Aaron will be there and Boat. I will be there in chat.
Thanks for
They're
filling
doing the
in,
CoCo show.
Thanks for taking
Good
over,
night.
Mark.
Good luck. Press the button,
Bye.
Frank.
See ya.
See y'all next week. 200.
Okay.